and over the courts and over the attorneys, because you can't go to the Bar Association. All of these judicial review committees are just complete bull. So you have families out there who are still fighting 10 to 12 years for their kids, and I think we need to go back and look at that and start to put our families together. And I think it's such an emergency situation that, maybe there's a governor out there that's willing to do this with me. I've got contact with a couple governors. So anyway, I know these guys want to get on the road, but I just want to say thank you for being willing to work with us. And we understand that family court hurts everyone.
That's right.
So anyway, thank you guys.
Thank you. All right, guys, I'm going to bring our guest on. We found out she was going to be in D.C. at the same time as us. So we are about to leave, and we're going to tag off, and they're going to take it from here.
Yeah.
Tell everybody what you are doing this week, Connie.
Okay, so good to see everybody here. We're dual streaming here on the Family Forward Project, and are we on Dad Talk Radio?
We are.
And on Dad Talk, and I think Eric and I kind of watched each other from a distance, and then at CPAC, we absolutely collided. It was great, and did an interview. Melissa Isaac did the interview with me, and has done one since. Actually, we did it together there, so we did another one.
Yep.
And it's great. I mean, Eric is a master at that, at doing these broadcasts. I am so proud of you. Just the way you're doing it, and it's so professional. And I mean, you're just awesome. So that's an attaboy for me.
Thank you. Talking a little bit about it, I know y'all did the special on it not long ago. But what are some of the ramifications that we're facing with Title 4D, and what's some type of legislation and solutions that you think we could get in place to help it?
Yeah, well, Title 4D has been a behemoth and beast since it started. I mean, and remember, I've been practicing law for 27 years, so I'm going to take you back, even before we had Title 4D, and it was kind of this scramble. I mean, honestly, and I heard Kimberly talking about it. The bottom line is, the courtroom is the last place a family needs to be, okay? It just is. I don't know how we just undo that whole entire mess. But I remember when the whole Title 4D stuff started happening, and when it was on the original sort of percentage thing, one of the first things that I did is I pulled out that chart that they created, right? So there was this original chart, and it was the 21, 32, 40%. I'm like, who made this chart? Right? Like, who made this decision? And so I started researching it and found out, it was like some college study of middle class America, and it's from 1992 or something, right? I mean, it's so irrelevant, and it's at a whole different economic system. So, and then it sort of morphed into this whole income shares thing, which it still just does not. It has so many problems. As a lawyer, one of the things that just drives me crazy is the phantom income that it assigns to people. It's like, well, you can't work. Well, you ought to. And the disparity, of course, male and female. It's like in Tennessee, if you're a guy and you can't get a good job, especially now these days, we're going to say you can make $40,000 a year, right? And if you're a female, we're going to say you can make $30,000 a year. And it's just a phantom. It's a total phantom income. So, the Title 4D then, of course, it crosses over directly into the child welfare, because you have to, if a kid goes into foster care, they have to get you before a Title 4D court in 10 days, and these poor parents who are shell-shocked and usually poor, are now faced with either paying child support to the state for taking their child, or, they can lose their kid forever.
Right.
Forever. And the same thing with, we have, even for just dads, I mean, basically in Tennessee, it's if you don't pay child support for 4 months, they can take your parental rights away from you. I mean, it's just totally crazy. So honestly, the whole Title 4D needs to be, I'm going to say the big A word, abandoned.
Yeah, 100%.
The big capital A word, and I've seen as an attorney that it's used as a tool to create more conflict. So it's, I am all for whatever you want to abolish with Title 4D. I am streaming right along behind you on that one.
I'm with you on that, and I know you guys know a little bit more about the ins and outs. There's so many different ways that program makes money and provides destruction to the families. But there's another topic that I've talked about, Connie. I'll be honest, I'm going to be straightforward with the viewers. I don't know as much about. I'm learning a lot more because we've been talking about it, and that's CPS. I know that you are very well versed with CPS. What are some of the issues that we are seeing with them right now?
Well, again, I worked in it 27 years, and I really started just grabbing onto it probably 15 years ago, when I really started seeing, I saw this change. First I saw where CPS wouldn't do anything, and then they became this overzealous, capturing kids and farming them out. And I related it back to the Adoption and Safe Families Act of 1997, the whole ASFA program, which gives the state a bonus check for adoption, and then the people who adopt continue to get the money on the child even after the adoption. I mean, it just makes no much sense. I really wish somebody, and I don't know, this would take somebody a lot smarter than me. Maybe you've got some of your guys you can put on this project.
Right.
We got some other guys here today that need a project, but we need to somehow globally, because I say, our kids are not for sale, and it's all a Cash for Kids scheme anyway, right? So I wish somebody globally could attach all the money, to a child, that whether it's through the child support and Title 4D, or whether it's through adoption assistance. It's these kids have a price tag on their freaking head from the day they're born. I mean, it's whoa. So, CPS started really just actively, I fought it for parents, viciously, right, for years. And, they hated me because I was so aggressive, the state did. But at some point, and I'm sure in kind of your journey, you came to some point too where you said, I can't do this. I said, I can't do this one case at a time. And I'm sure, at some point you're this isn't just about me.
Well,
right?
and let's talk about that, Connie, because I do not talk about my personal case, and a lot of people look at me like, he's got his kids, what's going on? I am an alienated father. I know what's going on, but it's not about me.
Right.
We're trying to get out there, and I think for a long time it's been telling stories around the campfire, and we can continue doing that, or we can all grab a bucket and get some water and help put the fire out.
Absolutely.
That's where I'm at with it. I mean,
Yeah, and I was trying to do it one case at a time. I mean, I would get in there and I'd be like, I'd be just pounding them, right? I mean, I'd be boxing these people down, but I would go through, and then I'd see the same thing happening on the other side of the state. I mean, medical kidnapping and children, baby infants who have complex medical conditions. And then I'd get a report from somebody across the state who either didn't have the resources to hire me, or, couldn't get the medical expert in. And I'm like, this is crazy. This has got to be a bigger picture. So, fortunately, because of just the rumble, at least from the CPS side, because of the rumble, a few things have started to happen. So the American Bar Association did finally create a subdivision for parent representation in CPS. And so that started focusing this issue, a little bit more on the parents' rights. We have a listserv, we share stories, and not just stories, but legislation and stuff going on across the state, or case law. So we do have the American Bar Association. We did get one great law passed federally, the Families First Prevention and Services Act, which is now the Families First Act in 2018, but the states aren't implementing it because it's this huge bureaucracy, right? And Title 4D is a huge bureaucracy now too, so it's, trying to make changes within a system that they these bureaucrats. And I also want to say, every time I say bureaucrats, I want taxpayers to say to themselves, my money, right? Because it is our tax dollars. They work for us. So I went in this year. I've made several attempts to get proposed legislation in over the years. Some of them have been pretty drastic, like abolished CPS, right? And they actually had some support for that. And so I went in this year with one simple little bill, which was for there to be a family advocate in every CPS case. And that would be somebody who would work along with the family, just help the family understand what was going on, understand what the policies, the procedures are, how they, get to court, and how they help their attorney. And DCS came in and botched up my bill the day before it was to be presented, by the way. The day before, they changed the language of it. And I have a great rep who's helping me, but she doesn't really understand that system very well. So we did get to have a discussion about it. It did not pass, and I'm okay the way it was because it was all botched up, but we did open that discussion. And then I will also tell you, and something that we're going to be discussing with our group this week, there is a new CAPTA reauthorization. So CAPTA is a Child Abuse Prevention and Treatment Act. It started in 1974, and this year in 2021 they're doing a reauthorization. And I've been reading that for the past 3 days, and there's a lot of changes in there that have to do with prevention and strengthening families and looking specifically at disabilities, poverty, drug abuse, etc. So from our perspective, I'm kind of excited about that. We're meeting here in DC. Kimberly's here, you just met her. Kathleen Arthur's here. Maureen is coming down from Connecticut. We've got Amy coming from Minnesota, right? Is Amy coming? Maybe?
Amy got attacked with court stuff at 11 o'clock at night the morning before she was supposed to leave to prevent her from
happens.
Oh man,
They got wind. Sad.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so, but anyway, there's a handful of us, and we're from all over the United States, and we're all advocates working in different areas. And if you're watching Eric's channel right now, go to Family Forward Project as well as a group, and there's also a Family Forward page, and kind of watch there because I have a lot of videos. I upload all of my videos to just Connie Reguli on YouTube. And then I have done a couple shows with Eric as well, so you can look for those there. But the new, we see a little bit of changes going on. I've got some people now ready to kind of do a pilot project in Tennessee on CPS. So, I don't know what, I don't, for the Title 4D thing, I don't know what kind of data you're collecting. How you're getting that story in a data package?
Well, see, that's not really where I've been in. I've been more of a mouthpiece. There's people that are really good in research. There's people that are good in the law section of it. I kind of stay in my lane with it, and they'll give me those statistics. So I report on a lot of what they do, to be honest with you. And Title 4D is just one of those that it is very confusing. Mm-hmm. It is very confusing. I've heard a lot of misconceptions on it, and we need to get some more knowledge out there because I know there's so many different things that does. But I wanted to talk to you about this, Connie. Now, yesterday we met up here with the National Coalition for Men. It's an organization that's been around since the early 70s. And one of the guys has been in it for 30 years, and he looked at me and he said, I have never been able to turn my back on it, but he said, in 30 years, I haven't seen no change.
Yeah.
And that just kind of hit me hard. Because I was like, here's a guy that's dedicated his life to something. But on the other hand of that, when we was at CPAC, we had legislators and candidates coming on the show talking about CPS is involved in human trafficking, wanting to abolish CPS. I think that change is coming.
Okay, so now that you've said that, let me say this. Because I've been a divorce attorney.
Yep.
And a CPS attorney, a paternity attorney for a long time. Okay. Again, I started the conversation with this. I'll say it again. The courtroom is absolutely the worst place to put a family because let me tell you, judges are not psychologists.
That's right.
They're not economists, right? They are not. They're really not conflict resolution people. Okay, and when you take just a state like Tennessee. We have about 66, now this is a stat I pulled like 10 years ago, so it's not totally accurate.
I understand, yeah.
But about 10 years ago, I pulled the vital record stats, and we had 66,000 marriages and about 35,000 divorces, okay? So we've got at least a 50% failure rate, and so we know at least half of the marriages are going to end up in divorce, and that doesn't even include paternity. So, and you can pull some of these stats, and we do need somebody for your group that I can actually talk to them and really kind of start talking to them about, okay, let's just sit down and just like start pulling some numbers,
absolutely,
like paternity actions, right? So there's a much larger range of paternity actions that are not really divorces, but we're the same thing, right? We're putting that family relationship in the court. So the area we have to go to, and I had started talking about this even from the CPS level, is a preemptive assessment.
Yeah.
Okay, we need to do a preemptive assessment of that child's or of children's needs, relationships, etc. So I just watched a TED Talk yesterday on a divorce attorney out in Nevada. I'm going to give you her name, but she talked about fatherless.
You talking about Marilyn York?
Maybe.
She's been on Dead Talk.
Okay, so, and she was talking about the number, she's pulled some of those numbers nationally about the number of divorces, the number of paternity actions, etc. So, so we've got to say, what do we do? And I thought it was compelling, her speech, because she talked about how you put a dad on the witness stand and you ask him, have you heard her say this? Who's the child doctor is, who the teacher is, and the dad doesn't know, but you ask the dad who's their favorite superhero, and
it was 100% correct.
Yeah,
too.
did you teach him to throw? Who taught him how to throw a ball and kick a ball and things like that? So there's a whole different level of skills and needs and stuff that are addressed. So, so we've got to look at it from that level. And I know California. I hate to say this,
but
I hate to say this out loud, but California did institute this family assessment thing that happens, but it's like $20,000 to do it. It's like outrageously. So I don't know what they do with families who can't afford it. It does not need to be that expensive. I mean, an assessment tool could be done by somebody with a bachelor's degree, who just took that opportunity. So I know that I am I'm shifting my life from everyday law to more policy practice and working with legislators. But we've got to be able to go to judges, like the judges' conferences and conventions, and say, this is the worst place in the world for you to decide a child's life, and we need some other tools. So it's huge. The shared parenting is a great step, because I've seen that it does force the judges to be more discerning as to what that should look like.
Right.
But I'm just going to be honest with you. Judges don't like it. They don't like it. They don't like to do custody cases. They'd rather do a contract case or a car accident,
Yep.
I mean, they don't like getting into the nitty gritty of he said, she said, and, he gave him the wrong kind of cough medicine, and, we've got 3 allergies and we're not getting, they can't keep up with it. They don't like it. So it's the worst place in the world for us to take families.
Let's talk about plan of attack. I've always said it, I believe shared parenting is the start. There's so many different things when it comes to child support, paternity fraud, all these things under the umbrella that eventually we're going to have to get some type of reform on. But I believe if we start with shared parenting, we can always come back and work. Would you agree with that, or is there a different angle?
Well, no, I agree, because the court system is legislatively defined. It is. So so it's good to get legislators to say that this is our public policy, because legislators create the public policy. So it's good to say this is our public policy, and to say that we're going to support that public policy with legislation. Okay, good. I mean, I see a lot of really stupid laws being passed all the time, but for them to take a position and say, here's what we want the courts to do.
Right.
Now, what I've seen, and I haven't followed all the laws, but what's happening with these legislative activities is they're kind of saying shared parenting is the presumption, but, right? There's like this big but in all of them. So, which, there are things like violence and stuff that do have to be considered, but I don't think so far it's really laid out for the courts. This is what you need to do to define that shared parenting. We do have what's called a list of factors to consider in custody in Tennessee, but I think, you know, the courts need to be looking at what are their work schedules, you know, because if you just go in and somebody goes 50-50 week to week, I mean, you may have a parent who's an over-the-road truck driver, you know, who leaves Monday morning and comes back Thursday. You can't do week to week, right?
My wife, her ex-husband's in the military. You know, so I understand all this, you know, the different situations that go into this. But, you know, one thing I've been doing when I go and talk to these legislators, I bring up the Kentucky bill, because I know domestic violence is always like one of our number one oppositions, if not the number one.
Yeah.
And within the first year of that being passed, domestic violence went down 30%.
Wow.
And it just cuts the legs right out from under them before it can even get started. And I always say, now, did domestic violence go down? Or did the allegation of domestic violence go down? Because I believe it was the allegation.
Yeah, I hear you.
We got to prove that. But statistics like that are huge.
Yeah. Well, okay, so this is a diversion, but I'm just going to throw it out there because I've got the experience with it. When I went to law school late in life, I came out as a prosecutor.
Yep.
Prosecutor in a major metropolitan area in Nashville, and I was in the domestic violence team when it was a very boutique kind of cool thing to do.
Yep.
And, you know, the first year we looked at murders, right? The first year we had like 22 murders and domestic violence. And so we worked really hard, you know, got all of our anger management. So next year we had like 12 murders. We're like, oh man, we're doing so good, right?
Yeah.
Next year at 25. So I said, you know, we're still not doing it right. Okay. We had a hiccup year where we had something, but and I'll tell you from that prosecutor's perspective, the one thing I started barking about early on was you're not treating both sides of the problem, right?
There you go.
Because I said it's the only crime that the victim is not an isolated victim.
Yep.
You know, they are frequently a participant, right? So, and I, of course, you know, I was in a metropolitan community with a lot of Democrats. And so, you know, of course, they kind of shut me down on that.
Yeah.
But, you know, they're like, no, we only treat the offenders. And I'm like, okay. So, but, you know, you've got to, and the same thing with when you talk about parental alienation, you know, we've got to treat both sides of that. You
That's
know,
right.
What is parental alienation doing to children, right? It's really what is happening to the child when you do that. So, and again, the courts just don't do a very good job of it.
That's right. Yeah, there's an interesting thing, Connie, you know, and anytime I have an attorney on the show, it's usually one of the first questions people ask is, in the court, how do you prove parental alienation? And would you say, I think sometimes people get so worried about titles that they forget the main thing is to show the behaviors.
Yeah.
You know, I see so much emphasis on what it's going to be called. Just show the behaviors.
Right, exactly true. I always tell people, you got to get me the evidence, you know. And I tell people this, I say, look, I'm just the lawyer. You own your case. You own the facts.
Right.
You need to, don't go in the courtroom and think, oh, she's going to have to prove that I'm a bad guy, right?
That's it.
Because all she has to do is get up there and say it, right? And it's
Yep.
evidence, right? And you have to combat every single thing that is said. So absolutely, and you know, and again, judges hate it when you walk in with a stack of text messages this tall, but it's the truth, you know?
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, I won early, before we were even text messaging people, I represented a dad, and the child was about 2. And mom kept saying, every time he comes to pick up the child, she's screaming and crying and she doesn't want to go. And I'm like, look, John, get a recorder, put it in your pocket. You get out of the car, turn the recorder on. And he did. And it was a 30-second audio, and he brought it back to me, and he goes to the door, opens the door, and the little girl goes, Daddy, Daddy, Daddy. You know? So you've got to get evidence. And these days, with the phones that we have, with text messages, audios, videos, you should have it all documented. But now, let me tell you, because attorneys are so expensive, you've not only got to get your evidence together, you have to have it like a library. I mean, you have to categorize it, you have to summarize it.
That's right.
Because you can't have an attorney spend 30 hours listening to all your recordings, right?
Yeah.
So there's all kinds of tools to do these days. I mean, there's a a website called rev.com where you can upload audios and they transcribe them for like $1 a minute, something incredibly reasonable. So, you know, you can hand that to your attorneys and then they can decide which ones they need to use. So, but you know, you have got to document the evidence, and you've got to document, I'm going to say this loud and clear for dads, because you have got to document your relationship with your child.
Yeah.
You have to do that. And as silly as it seems, you know, going out when you play ball in the park, you got to tape it. You got to videotape it, because I always tell people, when you walk in the courtroom, you are nothing but a manila folder to that judge. You are nothing but a manila. And your child, at least you have a face by the time you get there. Your child doesn't even have a face.
Yeah, and you have that brief amount of time to convince this stranger of who you are as a parent. And that's another thing behind shared parenting. If we could get some of these cases that never needed to be in family court in the first place, it's just mom and dad bickering back and forth. There's going to be, family law's not going anywhere. You're going to have family law courts, and that would open up the time for these judges to listen to these parents a little bit more thoroughly.
Right. Yeah, for real serious issues. I mean, there are some serious ones, but yeah, definitely. I mean, you know, you've got to, but dads have got to be able to show the relationship with their child.
That's
you know?
sad. You shouldn't have to prove that. You know?
I know, but you know what?
You do.
It's a
I get
stranger. It's another person, and it works. I'm just telling
I understand.
you, it works.
I get it.
I mean, even if I go in on a CPS case, I have a notebook of 150 pictures of the family doing things, you know?
Yep.
And the judge's like, I'm not going through all those pictures. We don't have to go through all those pictures one by one. And then I go, okay, mark it as an exhibit, and you can look at them, judge, right? So, you know, so it's you've got to become real. Your children have got to become real to the adjudicators, and they've got to be real people. That is so important, so important.
Yeah.
And I also, I encourage dads, I encourage dads to not be afraid to get a therapy person involved, and part of that is, as soon as you can. You can now, these days, you can get somebody, a therapist, you know, for $100 an hour. You know, sometimes in your community centers you can even do it less. But if you go in and you just say, look, I'm going through a divorce. And I want my child to have the ability to talk to me about how they're processing that. Because if you go and talk to your kid just as a parent and you're in the middle of a divorce or paternity action, they're going to shame you for that, right?
Yeah.
They're going to say, you can't stop talking to your kids about the divorce, right? And I kind of agree, just because most people are not really qualified to do that in a way that doesn't cause more confusion, depending on the age of the child. But it's okay to get a third person to say, you know, let's say you have an 8-year-old son, and you say, you know, look, you and I, we're going to go talk to this other person. There's changes going on in your life.
Yeah.
Just want you to be able to process what that's going to look like after it's over. Because when people come into me and they talk to me about a divorce or a custody case, I always ask them, the adult, I say, what do you want this to look like when you're on the other side of this, right?
Right.
And it's an amazing question to ask. Every attorney should ask that question, because let's say I am working with a mom who's maybe a little overzealous, and I can tell she's a little over the top, and I've had him, trust me, you know, and I can say, you know, I just want to warn you, or I want you to be careful of where you're going with that, right? So, and there are some people who brought things to me that I've refused to present. So yeah, we've got to look at assessment. We've got to look at what are assessment tools that we can get before the court and get good information. And but keep pushing the legislative shared parenting. So, because as the juvenile and family court judges are forced to have to look and make a bigger decision, because remember, I'm also from the era that, you know, you get every other weekend, right? So
yeah. I'm
totally aware. And it was like the standard. It was like, don't ask any questions, right? It's like, unless you can show me that mom's, you know, trying to drown her kids in the bathtub, this is the way it's going to be, right?
And even then, sometimes it didn't work. You know, Connie, I think I get so many messages from the people that watch the show asking, what can they do? How can they get involved? what would be some advice that you could give to them if we've got some advocates, or maybe they're just now going through this and they're like, I don't want this to happen to anybody else, I got to get involved. Where should they start? What can they do?
Well, of course, if they're, doing father's rights, they should be joining and following you and watching what you're doing. But one of the first things they need to do is, it's amazing how many people do not know who their state legislators are.
Yep.
Right? You need to, every state now has a website, very easy to find. As a matter of fact, there's a website called Find My Legislator.
I'll tell you guys, it's this easy, and it's been shocking. We've been going around to the different states showing people how to get in touch with their legislators, how to talk to them. Whatever state you're in, or Virginia House of Representatives, a website will pull up with every single one of them, with their names, their telephone numbers, their email addresses. Type in Virginia Senate. You can do that for every state in the United States of America. Every one of your House, every one of your representatives. Sometimes they even give you their home phone number.
Yeah.
We was calling them at home the other day. Call them, set up a meeting. Get in there and talk to them and bring awareness to this issue.
Yeah, but there's a website called Find My Legislator, and I think it's findmylegislator.org, and you just put in your address, and it gives you your state and your national reps. And and a lot of people, and I'm going to say, I started my sort of citizen lobbying back in 2009, 2010, and I was a lawyer. I mean, I've been practicing law for, 15 years by then. And I was afraid to talk to him, right? So I get it when people go like, I don't know what to say, I'm afraid to talk to him. I'm going to say, first of all, they put their shoes on just like you do.
That's right.
They put their shoes on just like you do, and your state legislators are the closest representative to you. They are the closest one, especially your House reps. And they honestly want to hear from their community. They want to hear from their community of issues that are important to them. So even if you just say, hello, my name is Connie, and I want you to know I am for shared parenting. And just because somebody in their office is going to write that down, right? Mm-hmm. And if you, and just start there. Just start there, because the narrative that narrative, like I'm for child welfare reform. If people just say that, they just call their state legislators, because then they will keep their eye open for people like Eric and me and, other people who are then coming to their face and saying, we know it's not, we have behind us. I always say now, I have 15,000 people behind me in the Family Forward Project that I know of. But, there's a lot of other people that follow us, but those are people who are all for child welfare reform. So find out who your state and federal legislators are. From the federal side, let me stay on state. You also just go to the website, then your Virginia House, Virginia Senate, whatever. Look at the committees, okay, because they are all run by committees now. So look at your committees and look for the committees that handle these kinds of issues. Judicial generally, civil justice, something like that. I know for the Tennessee website, you can search bills by subject, and so you can just type in children, and you can get just a list of the bills that are covering children. Or you can type in Department of Children's Services, you can type in divorce, so you can look for bills and just look at who's sponsoring bills, right?
Yep.
So if you're for shared parenting and you go to Virginia and you see somebody has sponsored a shared parenting bill, just call them up and give them an attaboy, right?
That's it.
And that may not be your rep, but I don't care if they're a rep from across the state. You can say, look, I'm aware of what Eric Carroll is doing and other groups of dads, and I want you to know, I want to thank you. I just want to thank you for putting that bill out there, right?
That's it. Yeah.
And they appreciate that so much, because if you ever watch the legislative process, and now I'm sure you've seen it a little bit, and you're like, whoa.
Oh yeah, it's a wake up call.
It reminds me of, in Nashville we have a fairground, and we have like a little speedway on the fairground. It's just like, it's this little tiny thing, right? Yeah. And it's like, legislative process reminds me of that fairground speedway, because it's like the cars are like falling apart. And it's like they're in and out trying to change things, or their engine blows up, or
Well, and sometimes these guys get such a bad rep. They're like, oh, you don't care about kids, and I'll see people online throw off on them all the time. But some of these guys are genuine. They really want change, guys. But when they go and sponsor something, that's going to affect you. It's going to affect our kids, and you're not showing up. You're not liking. You're not sharing. I don't know what to tell you, because if they're going to back our issues, they should have thousands of people that are showing up, doing whatever needs to be done. And that's one thing that really hurts my heart with this. When up here in D.C., I saw the few different rallies and stuff, and I was looking, and I said, we should be filling these streets up out here. We are one of the biggest issues out there, and half the time people don't show up, and that's the biggest part of this.
Well, and let me tell you an interesting my take on that from the CPS side, just a minute. So you don't get press on this,
No.
major press, but one of the reasons you don't get press is because really it's a bipartisan issue. And it's hard defining those things.
We need conflict.
Right, there's not enough conflict.
I got you.
I was just reading the new CAPTA reauthorization bill. It's totally bipartisan.
Yep.
Okay, so it's a bipartisan bill, so nobody out there is really talking about it. Now, the other thing, and everybody else needs to be aware of, is these legislators have a lot of lobbyists from the executive branch and from the judicial branch.
Oh yeah.
Should never happen. They should be totally, there are three separate branches of government. The legislative branch is supposed to be the strongest branch of government because they create our public policy, they create the framework for our laws, and everything in family law is created by us. There's no common law in family law. It's all statutory law. It's called a derogation of common law. It's layer upon layer upon layer upon layer. It's all mucked up. So, but you have a judicial branch, judges, family court judges coming in and saying, well, going to take us too much time, that'd be really hard, we got to, so preponderance of evidence, no, clear convincing evidence of what, that's way too hard. So you have these other bureaucrats, taxpayer-funded people who are going to halt change. They do not like change, period. Bureaucrats do not like change. So what you need to do is find out who your state legislators are, number one. Get them in your phone. Put them in your phone. Number two is you need to find out what committees there are, what bills there are, so that you know who to contact. And again, your first contact can be, hello, this is Connie. I want you to know I support shared parenting. Okay, that's all you have to do. And then you need to start, finding other people that you can coalesce with. You need to be following people. And then, and we will, it's not silent in the U.S. It's just still kind of this rumble, right?
Right. You know what, Connie? I just had an idea. Why don't one day we ought to get on, make a few calls to legislators, and let them hear us talk to them.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
We will show you guys how to do it, because that's where the power is. We will come on and show you how to approach the legislators and how that conversation is going. Because, man, if we had people doing that in each state, guys, and they did it on a weekly basis, this thing would happen.
Well, and I'll tell you, I tell everybody to have a 1 minute, a 3 minute, and a 10-minute spiel. Okay? And
Yes.
When I go to the state legislature, they only give me 3 minutes. I was there this last week.
Right.
Like, 3 minutes, Miss Reguli, because they see me coming, right?
Yep.
And DCS is sitting in the room. And, this time, usually I write it out and I practice it and I rehearse it and I record it and I play it back to myself, so I know exactly that I can keep them happy and say what I want to say in 3 or 10 minutes. But this time they call, I just want to, because my rep was like, I don't know if I know enough, Connie. And I'm like, just find a way to let me get up there, right? So she got me up there and they set me down and they just said 3 minutes, Miss Reguli. And so I know enough about my topic that I could blast out the most critical things
That's right.
first. And I did post my video of the whole thing, and I posted the whole thing because there was some discussion. I wanted everybody to see there was some discussion about it, but I'll clip out my 3 minutes too. And I've got a couple other legislative presentations, but you're right. I think that'd be great, just do some mock-ups and just, say, what are you going to say? What are you going to do?
Well, so, and I've been around and we've been doing this and meeting with some people, and one of the biggest things that people do, they want to tell their personal stories.
Right.
Don't do that. You're not representing you. Nobody's going to change the law just because of you. We are all being affected. It's about the bigger picture, guys.
Right.
And you can talk to somebody so long you see them check out.
Absolutely. And if you can say, I've had a bad experience, which has heightened my interest in this.
Right.
But I know it's not just me.
Yep.
It's not
that's
just
right.
me. And that is enough. And then if they want to know more personally about you, then they'll ask you,
That's
right?
it. Yep.
So, because sometimes they will, if you take that approach, if you go, look, I've had a personal experience, makes me very aware of this, caused a lot of injury, but I know it's not just me. Here's some recommended changes.
Well, because if they're asking the questions, that means they are wanting that information. Right. But if you just go and sit down and start Title 4D and this, and this, they'll check out.
Yeah, and you just say, here's some recommendation of changes in the law, and just be spot on. Just have 1 or 2 or 3 things. Because I've gone in child welfare. I wrote a whole statute called the Families First Act for Tennessee. It's like 25 pages. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Right? And they go like,
oh, I can imagine.
They're like, we can do. And then one time I went in there and I had I bullet pointed it. The next time I'm like, here's 13 things, right? It was anonymous reporting. It was second opinions on medical, and all of these bills are bills that have shown up somewhere in some state, but again, they just totally flat overwhelmed. So that's why this year I went in and I said, we want a family advocate in every case. So and I know in the divorce process we need that same kind of thing. I don't know the direct application of that through the divorces and paternity cases yet, but I think that's going to morph into something more. But yeah, for sure. We can, we can certainly knock that up. And
we'll do that. We'll get you guys
We can
going.
role play back and forth here. And
you get better the more you do it.
Yeah.
And I always say we're just trying to put the hook in the mouth so we can walk out that door and they're going to call us back later wanting more information.
Yeah. And 3 minutes is nothing. Okay. 3 minutes is like 2 pages typed up. So you can sit down there and just write up what you would want to say. And I record myself on the computer and I just listen to it. Or everybody now has a phone, right? That you can, you can handwrite your spiel up, but start it with, I've had an experience that has heightened my awareness and my interest in this.
Yep.
And having studied it, I'd like for you to look at doing this, this, and this, and just give them 3 options. And then if they want to know, they'll say, well, what happened to you? Let them ask that question.
That's right. Now, Connie, are y'all going to be doing any lives or anything, updating the people on what's going on this week?
I'm sure we will. I am sure we will. Yeah, because there's a lot of people wanting to come or know what's going on. And so we're definitely going to be doing that.
Tell everybody on Dad Talk where they can find that if they want to see what you got going on this week.
Okay, so we have Kimberly Lowe here with Virginia, and I'm sure she'll be streaming it from Friends of Kimberly Lowe. Where will you be?
It's actually Kimberly Lowe for Congress now.
Oh, okay.
You guys, Kimberly Lowe for Congress, and we might try to set up some Zooms because we're going to be meeting, discussing how you approach legislators, and I think that's going to be really important information for everyone. We're also going to have breakout sessions and brainstorming sessions on how do we fix this problem, what should we be focusing on. I'm really excited to be meeting everyone to be working on this. What a great opportunity. And I want to say that this is a nonpartisan issue. We have people from the far left, the far right, and everything in between coming together to solve these problems. We've got moms coming together, dads coming together, single parents,
relatives,
married parents,
grandparents,
relatives, grandparents, everyone. This is a multifaceted issue. And it's really important that we all work together to solve it because it's not fair to anyone.
Right. And also, now finally psychologists are recognizing the trauma to kids through this process. And it's huge, right? Because now we have You know, we have a whole generation now of adults that were part of that, right?
Yep.
In some way or another, and they know that it was not the best situation. So anyway, so you have a page.
Yeah, Kimberly Lowe for Congress, and Amy with Parents Assisting Parents might be trying to do some type of Zoom session from her page.
Okay.
But
And then I have the Family Forward Project group on Facebook is where I'll be doing lives from. Whenever I do a live, and with this one, I download it, I upload it to just Connie Reguli on YouTube. And if you do not have Zoom on your phone, you need to download Zoom. Because if we do any lives or any Zoom live that you can join, we'll just post that meeting link, and all you'll have to do is tap that link. And I know I have the professional Zoom, so you know we can probably take 100 people on there at one point. So yes, get Zoom on your phone, and then and we'll share, because I have some other things that I'm working and developing on as far as on weekly sessions, etc. So we'll be sharing that as well.
All right, we're about to make the trip to Maine, so you're probably going to see us talking to you in the car a good bit ourselves, but this is amazing. We're starting down at the bottom, going to the top. You guys are down here. We're covering that whole northeast spectrum, and this is the very meaning of grassroots.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Now, are you going to New York, Frank?
Yeah.
Frank is.
We're going to be in Albany, New York that morning, and then around 7 o'clock at night we got a rally in New York City.
Yeah, the 14th.
Yeah, we're going to Rochester tonight though, and we got to leave Rochester and go to Maine. So
oh my gosh.
we got a lot going on, and we'll be in Maine and New Hampshire tomorrow, guys. Boston, Rhode Island, and Connecticut the next day, and then New York the next day, Pennsylvania the next day, and then we're coming back to Maryland on Friday. So there'll be a lot of content going out, but meeting with the legislators, doing this, I can't stress the importance of it.
It's so important. I mean, it is so important, you know, and even every one voice matters, you know. I mean, so many things. If you look at changes that have occurred, they all start from one point of light, you know, and then it starts to grow. So
That's right.
we got a lot of work to do. Thank you so much.
Thank
for
you.
Everything
Thank
that
y'all.
you do. And thank you for taking a few minutes to meet up with me this morning. So our paths cross again, and
That's
I'm
it.
sure they will again. And are you coming to Tennessee?
Yes, possibly even next week. So we'll see, but Tennessee is definitely a state, you know, I can drive to that one. So.
Yeah, that's true. You can
Yeah.
come there anytime.
All right, guys,
All right, very
well,
good.
stick around. Love you. We're going to get to it.
Yep, everybody hang in there. See ya. Bye.